But I'm really excited to share, and I'm really excited to talk about this topic. I've been thinking about it a lot, and I have some different resources that I can share at the end too, just like some websites and some books and things like that that I read, and just really glad you guys want to hear about it, and I'm happy to share. So it's 2 o'clock, and I was telling Nicole I'd like to get started by doing a mindfulness practice, a Buddhist meditation called the Tonglen practice, and you all may be familiar with it, but the Tonglen practice means sending and taking. It is a practice to awaken and support compassion towards ourselves and others. It is a practice to do when you're having an uncomfortable feeling, and it will transform that feeling into compassion. So I would like to invite you to get into a comfortable meditative seat and take a moment to relax into your breath. You can close your eyes if comfortable, soften your gaze. As you breathe, sense into the texture of any negative feelings, energy, or emotions that are present. Practice breathing in that texture. Darkness, heaviness, warmth, whatever sensation is present. And when you breathe out, emit positive energy, perhaps the opposite texture. Lightness, brightness, cooling. Stay in this practice for several breaths, focused on that texture. Think of a time recently where you experienced suffering, pain, or an uncomfortable feeling. When you breathe in, allow yourself to feel this feeling completely. When you breathe out, imagine that you could offer it to be held by the heart of the world and all of the other people who also feel as you do. When you're ready, take one final big deep breath in and out, and you can open your eyes. Welcome, Teresa. Teresa joined us during our practice. We were just starting off with a little meditative practice today. And that you're here, Teresa, and it's wonderful to see you guys today. I'm so excited to share a little bit of something that is very near and dear to my heart, and that is giving yourself a little bit of grace around in the environmental movement, climate change, how we live our lives in a mindful way, and think about what we can do as individuals to make the world a better place. And so I wanted to start off by just sharing this quote from the founder of Climate Healers. It's a wonderful website that I recommend that you check out if you're interested. There's a book that I read by the founder of this organization called Carbon Dharma. And in Buddhist traditions, carbon dharma is the insight into the truth of how things really are. And it is also the ethical conduct of the Eightfold Path of an Awakened Life. And in his book, he really talks about sort of the state of things, the background, the history, and some of the work that's been done over the past multiple decades around climate change and environment. And like it was a I already had some ideas around environmentalism, and I already cared very much about um, our human ability to make it a habitable place. But I think that this book was one that really took it to the next level. So I just really love this work. And next, I just want to share something that was in that book, and it is a metaphor about if the earth was a person and talking about the rise in temperature. So currently the current increase in the planet's temperature of zero point 0.8 Celsius is the equivalent of a human running a persistent 100-degree fever. And there is the IPC suggests in 100 years, I guess it's more like 80, that there may be as much as a 5.8 Celsius increase in the planet's temperature, which equates to 107.6 Fahrenheit temperature. And we know that humans cannot live with a temperature of 107.6 for very long. So, there is some urgency around addressing climate change, and it can feel very enormous, and it can drive us to apathy. But as nurses and as healthcare professionals, something like this really we can relate to, because it's talking about the earth as our environment, and we want it to be a healthy place. And so, with that, I have found some statistics around climate change anxiety that in a recent study, around 45% of people in the age group of 16 to 25 said that climate anxiety affects their daily lives. And there are directories of climate aware therapists. And so we know that the climate crisis affects how we think and feel. And we know that our young people are concerned. This is their future. How can we make an impact? We can start by acting individually to care for the planet in all the small ways, to provide hope and caring cultivation of the planet for future generations. It's not to give up trying, but to face the truth and do our best to take care of the world. And I don't know if you guys saw this morning, someone had posted on one of our shared Facebook pages that there is some research that's done around counseling and coaching. And I thought that was pretty cool, thinking that, there are climate aware therapists, but maybe that we can have more awareness around our coaching with climate change as well, and helping our clients with some of those concerns and worries. And so also just wanted to share in the background that there are many professional nursing organizations that advocate for nurses to engage and empower individuals to adopt environmental lifestyle changes. And so I've listed a few here. They're pretty big names. And so we know that we have the scientific and research backing of these professional organizations. And it's a great opportunity for us to learn more about what they're doing and read the things that they have as far as policy statements. And I think it's really important to recognize that in the American Association of Nurse Colleges, the AACN, their new essentials document includes climate change as part of nurse education, and that they have that as part of the accrediting body for professional nursing practice, that climate change is something that nurses are expected to know about and teach new nurses about, and because it's going to be such a big part of our future. And if you guys have questions or anything that you want to add, feel free to do so as we go through. We'll probably have plenty of time at the end as well. And so for those of you who are familiar with the the INCA theory of integrative nurse coaching. I just thought I'd put that on here because, what we're looking at here on the outside of the model are the internal and external healing environments. And I really feel like climate change and environmental sustainability are part of our healing environment. And so what better way than to include those environmental aspects of health that are in the integrative health and wellness tool already, and that you guys are already familiar with, and give you a little bit more background on some of the things that we could dig a little bit deeper into when we're doing coaching with our clients, to uncover if there are things around environmental sustainability that they would like to work on as far as goals, and how that, is all connected. So we know that in INCA that we are all big fans of Florence Nightingale. And so I just asked the question, what would Flo do when she sees from statistical methodology our current environmental issues? She always advocated for the importance of healing environments and knows that that's at the heart of nursing practice. And so this really is part of what nurses do. It's part of what nurses can do for the future. And there's some wonderful organizations that are doing cool work with environmental stuff already. So I hope that from this presentation that you'll feel compelled to start Googling away and find some different things that you can learn more about. And then I just wanted to transition a little bit into some contextual framework for environmental lifestyle goals that I use for my personal practice and on my journey. So I think that I heard that there's a few of us yoga teachers in the room right now, and I also studied a 200-hour yoga training, so yoga teacher training. And I really feel like that the ethics of yoga that we learn about in the Yoga Sutras, the yamas and niyamas, are a wonderful framework for thinking about just mindfulness and living and day-to-day choices that we make. And so I just wanted to promote that, going into the yamas and niyamas, to kind of look at that overall, just how you live your life, fits really well with making environmental sustainability choices on a day-to-day basis. And going back to giving yourself some grace, though, when we have these things, then it also gives us permission to recognize that we're human, and recognize that we can't do everything perfectly all the time. That our systems aren't set up for us to be 100% environmentally conscious about everything all day long. It's just really, really hard. So I think being able to go back to some foundational ethical practices such as this, or maybe you have another practice that you like to use, but using that as part of what you decide when you create your goals about the choices that you're making is really important. And so on that note, I also just want to put a little plug in for mindfulness. And I think, that following an ethical practice, but then also creating some mindfulness practices, helps you to be rooted in the present moment and untangle your thought patterns. It gives you the opportunity to change habits, which then impacts the choices that you make about what you consume and what you do with the things that you consume. This also is about, it all comes back to self-care and being the change that you want to see in the world, and how you can spread that, and how that can be spread one person at a time. And that you also at the same time give yourself permission to forgive yourself and others when things don't go perfectly, right? So this is all sort of rooted in, I think, over the course of being a nurse and going to yoga teacher training and going to nurse coaching training, that these foundational elements can work really well in so many different niches and so many different ways of coaching. But for environmental sustainability, lifestyle choices, I've found that these are things that really help me quite a bit to work through some of those challenges that we have. And just putting in a double, triple plug for self-care, having self-care, taking the time to rest, taking the time to do things for yourself, for your health and well-being, provide you with that capacity for more measured choices so that you're not overwhelmed, so that you're not in a rush, so that you can take a breath and say, is this really what I want to do right now? Right. So always at the root of everything, for sure. And then you guys are all coaches. And so I did put in a slide here because I wasn't really sure who the audience would be, but I just wanted to like review that using the coaching process with a client who may have some environmental lifestyle changes that they want to make is going to work because it works for everything. But that, you know, those stages of change and recognizing just the complexity of the systems that we live within to make those choices, it's really helpful to have a coach, and it's really helpful to have a methodology for making lifestyle changes. And, you know, just doubling down on just the denial. I mean, we see it a lot around climate anxiety and climate change. Um, it's it's a big sort of onerous issue, and we tend to feel hopeless about it sometimes. But um, we we do have we do have it within us to make different choices and to forgive ourselves for how hard it is. I think, and I know that I struggle with it, and that sometimes when I've thought about really talking about this, I go to a place where I think, well, I'm not perfect. I use plastic things, and I sometimes go out and get fast food. And when I could just make it a hamburger at home or whatever like that, you know. So um, we know that it's not easy, but that doesn't mean we can't try. So I wanted to share some potential goals that could be explored with clients who might want to make some environmental changes in their lifestyle. So, in a general sense, you know, there could be some nutrition goals. There could be some goals around reducing toxic materials in your environment, consumer choices around packaging, how to shop, where to shop, ordering online versus going to physically drive to a store. These things, you know, can be considered, and what products to avoid for your own health, for your own environmental health and your family's environmental health, and what products are good for that. What about choices around gardening and preserving your own food? How, what kind of energy is used in your home? What kind of car do you drive? How do you dispose of your waste? Are you recycling? Are you composting? And then lastly, and hugely, connecting with the planet by finding time to enjoy nature can be a wonderful starting place if you feel like you want to live a more environmentally friendly lifestyle. And so just to talk a little bit about nutrition, and just going by what the research shows is that a vegan diet is really best for the planet. Reducing meat consumption to help reduce carbon footprint is also something that can be done that's a little bit less extreme, right? So, you know, research has shown that also individuals who eat organic vegan diets have better health outcomes. And examples of the way that it can improve your health is having a lower body mass index, fewer incidences of cardiovascular disease, and decreased cancer risks. There are also some elements of a vegan diet that don't meet complete nutritional requirements, and so we as nurses can look at that and try to optimize health by looking at what kind of things might need to be supplemented. B12 is a big one, right? So there are some different things that we could do as nurses to share how this is a doable diet, and it can promote health. But also just knowing that cattle grazing and industrial farming practices account for 14.5 to 18% of greenhouse gas emissions. And so most of those emissions are from methane produced by ruminating cattle. And there's also transportation related to greenhouse gases, and that is 12% globally. So transportation is actually less than the emissions from ruminating cattle. So there's some different ways that we can make an impact on the environment that people don't always talk about or think about. And as nurses, we can focus on this as both a way to promote health and promote health of the planet. The other, another big topic that I was mentioning before is just the consumption of resources. What to do about all that plastic? It's just everywhere, right? And it's hard to avoid. I know I was reading an article recently where there was an individual, and she went to the store, and her goal was to try to not buy anything that was plastic, not buy plastic, things that were wrapped in plastic or any kind of plastic container. And it was very difficult. I think she came out of the experience with potatoes and onions, and she made a deal with herself because she wanted that bell pepper, but it had the plastic sticker on it. So and then she wanted spaghetti noodles, and so she decided to go with the box of spaghetti noodles that had the smallest plastic window showing what the spaghetti noodles looked like. So it's really hard to avoid plastic. It's just everywhere. And then looking at transportation choices, making mindful choices about that. Sometimes if you want to take mass transit rather than drive your own car, then that requires more planning and more time. And so, some of these things can be really challenging, but, if you're open to looking at what are the benefits of that, riding the train to work, you get to enjoy reading a book or watching a show on your device or things like that. So there are lots of choices that can be made, and if there's a client that's interested in exploring those, then this could be a really exciting way to learn more about environmental lifestyle yourself too. So it's pretty good stuff. And then just wanted to share a little bit about, recycling. Everyone probably thinks about that a lot when they think about environmental lifestyle stuff. And, it's kind of depressing to hear that even when we maybe sort and recycle, especially plastic things, that there's not really the infrastructure to actually recycle a lot of plastic. And so some of it doesn't really get recycled, even though we're sorting it and doing our part and trying to recycle it, it ends up in the landfill. So, how do we make choices around, going to a farmer's market and using our own produce bags and doing things like that to just try to prevent the not only plastic for recycling, but just reducing our use of plastic. And, is there a place where you can set up a garden and do a little composting? There's always options around secondhand, going to Goodwill and getting things that have been used before, but they're still in good shape. So I think that's also like probably one of the things that people think about most when they think about things that you can do to help the environment. But, there's a lot of nuance there that, if you get into the research and you find out about the resources that you can potentially maximize. And I think that is about the end of it. I've got some different resources listed here that, I would really hope that you would have a time to check out. And I'm happy to send these along to any of the participants that are here today, or that I can send along to Nicole, because there's some just wonderful resources out there and some really great things that can be done. Just little things that add up. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about what I've shared, or if you guys have any additional comments or information that this sparked in your mind as I went through it. I'd love to hear.
Emily, if you go close your presentation or stop sharing screen, then we can see each other, and that may be helpful.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
I think we may be able to. Yeah.
I'm busy thinking about all of the things that you said.
Yeah,
No,
it's
I
pretty like concentrated information, but just some really great resources out there that I've been reading and just trying, like, day to day, just stopping and thinking about, even when you have kids and they want to stop and get a milkshake in the drive-through, and like trying to discern, like, okay, is that, can I make just as good of a milkshake at home with a carton of ice cream that I bought at the grocery store, right? And how can I make that special so that we can avoid those little plastic straws, and use our own cups and things like that, right? So it's just like every day those things come to you, and then like adding that in as part of what you use to discern your choices. I think it makes a big difference. And I've been thinking about this a lot, and I do wonder sometimes, like, maybe all this stuff that I just shared are things that you guys already know. And this seems like, nothing really novel. So I would love to hear that feedback, if you feel like this is stuff that is just pretty common knowledge, or if you feel like you learned anything new, or have anything that you felt was a revelation to you from the presentation.
Hi, Emily.
Oh, hi,
This is
Karen.
Karen Avino. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. It's good to see you.
Good. Thanks. Um, yeah, I really enjoyed your presentation. I think it's interesting in that you're probably right that, it's common sense, a lot of it, right? But it's not in our daily awareness because it's so readily available and, to us. So the question always is, how do you create more awareness around it?
Mhm.
Um, but there's so much influence on the impact on health that I just wonder if there's an opportunity for us as nurse coaches to, um, you know, even though we not, education is part of the role of a nurse or a nurse coach, how much of that can we do with people, or can we encourage them to go to the resources and research it on their own? And I guess it all depends upon um, how interested and how willing they are, right, to delve deeper into that topic. But
Mhm.
thank you. I really enjoyed your presentation. I thought you did a great job.
Thank you. Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Good.
And
I really
I think
liked your
it's, and I think
first slide.
that's, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. What?
I really liked your first slide, thinking about the earth as if it were a person. I
Mhm.
think that helps change the narrative a little bit when you're thinking about approaching that. And I'm curious, in your practice, are you seeing a number of people with climate anxiety as a concern that they're identifying?
I am not. But I am reading about it, and it seems like, from what I'm reading, it's coming up more and more. And I wonder if, as we see, especially in our country, I think one of the things about this too is that in some places on the planet, they've seen a lot more effects of climate change that we don't appreciate, and it hasn't impacted our lifestyle as much as a first world country in the United States. But as we see these heat domes, and as we see the extreme weather, and as we see more of the impacts of the Earth increasing in temperature, then will we see more anxiety? And is it that the anxiety is coming more from younger people, from children and young people who recognize that they have their lives ahead of them? And if things are like this now, what will things be like in 50 years? And knowing that we see a lot of pledging by government for Paris Agreement, or for mitigating climate change in different ways, but then it's like, it just depends on which way the wind is blowing, right? You have, and it becomes such a political issue that we're sort of at the will of we're at the will of companies and corporations and governments that have competing priorities, right? So younger people see that future, and I think probably are more anxious than those of us who are older. I just suspect.
Well, I definitely feel an element of anxiety of, am I able to do enough?
Mhm.
And I do believe that impact begins with self. We have to begin with ourself in order to affect change in some way. And things that I do have an impact in climate and other things too, and how I feel about it as well. So that your approach of gathering us together with the sense of giving us grace, and recognizing that this can be filled with anxiety. This can be filled with sense of hopelessness. Like, is it the stuff that I do going to even make a change? I don't know, but I believe it can. And I really appreciated that perspective of coming to this topic with that intention of grace. And so I really appreciate that. I also had to giggle a little bit when you were telling the story about plastic, because I too am exploring, like, how can I make a difference with plastic? Because plastic is an issue. And, I was in Thailand and I saw on the shores every day, plastic, plastic, plastic. And we don't see that. And I lived on the shores of Washington state and I didn't see that. So, but other places are really seeing this impact. And so I'm going to share some things that I have been doing. So one, my husband doesn't quite understand, but it's okay. He's getting it, is that, I use a plastic garbage bag. So instead of changing the garbage bag every time I bring out my kitchen garbage, I just keep the same bag. And so I just dump the garbage into the garbage can and then bring the same bag in. And he's like, but that's gross. And I was like, but it's okay, because eventually we're going to throw that bag out. However, we could use it like 5 times. And that is like one little itty bitty thing I have control over. And the other thing is, I do quite a few things, but the other thing I thought was easy to do is when I go to the grocery store, I never use those little bags for my vegetables. I never use them. I just put my radishes in my cart. I don't put them in the bag. I don't put my carrots in a bag. I just put them all in my cart. And then when I get home, I wash them and I put them in a reusable type of a bag that I can just throw in the washing machine when it gets, if I leave my cucumbers in the fridge too long and they get gross and slimy, I could just throw that bag into the washing machine. But I feel like that helps me bring hope to what I am doing, even though I don't know if it has a huge impact, but I feel like I can have some kind of impact.
But every little thing adds up. I do the same thing. I actually bought some like cloth mesh bags that you can use for
that's
produce.
what I have.
Yeah. And I think, and so on top of taking your own bags for groceries, you can also like throw your radishes in and not worry about it. But then if you've got if you want to get some peaches or something, you can put them in that mesh bag, right? So it's all those little things. And composting is huge. I can say we started composting a few years ago, and I feel like it made a giant difference even in the amount of garbage that we made, because so much of what we don't use, we're putting in the compost rather than putting it in the trash. And that can make a big difference over time. And then you have compost and you can use it in your garden if you have a place for that. So yeah, it is just all those little things. And, using your own cups when you go places, and making choices about carpooling or using mass transit. And it's about decisions. And I think that's why it aligns beautifully with coaching, because like Karen said, if people are interested, then it gives you a platform to start to explore. And then as a nurse coach, because you know that it's going to impact the health not only of individuals but communities and the planet. I mean, this is a closed system, right? We're not there's no planet B, I think I've heard before, right? So I think about the analogy of when I was a kid, my dad said, we had an aquarium, and my dad said, you know, this aquarium has to be cleaned every week because it's a 10-gallon aquarium. If you have a 50-gallon aquarium, you don't have to clean it as much because there's more room. And I think we kind of treated the planet like a 50-gallon aquarium, but over time, you know, you have to clean it eventually. And so that's kind of where we are, right? And I think there have been a lot of wonderful technologies too that are being explored and being introduced that are going to help so much. But the clock is ticking, right? And the planet's heating up. So if we as individuals can be aware, and as nurses that are professionals that are promoting the health of our people and communities and planet, it's just all connected, right? And so we have kind of a responsibility to be knowledgeable and at least recognize what resources are available if people come to us as coaching clients and they want to make changes to their lifestyle for their health. You know, this is just another facet of that. And I think it's already embedded in the model for integrative nurse coaching. And so I want to say that's probably why this program appealed to me when I embarked on becoming an INCA alum and going up to Harmony Hill in 2019. It was 2018. No, it was 2019. The last couple of years have been a blur, but you know, it's part of being an integrative, holistic nurse to look at our environment and recognize that it impacts the way we feel so much. And if we feel like we're making a difference, then that can be spread to others. It's powerful.
I'm a little late to the party. I apologize. I was in my car.
Oh,
But I think
that's
I heard most of it. I think I got on about 2:10 Western time. So I appreciate your presentation and taking time to do that. It was great. So I want to get a little bit back to the question about are people really concerned about, you know, climate change? I don't know, in my opinion, it's like geographically where you are has a lot to do with it. So I live in Olympia, Washington, and it's kind of a little enclave of kind of environmental hotbed, I would say. And so I do see people, I'm still a student, but I do see clients who have real issues with that. I mean, that's just one more thing on top of, you know, all the other challenges we have going on. So I think potentially it could be geographically driven as far as how much that concerns people. But
yeah, you're pretty close to the water there, right? So thinking about sea level rise, and you know, if you bought a house and then you're worried about it being flooded or.
right, yeah, it's you know, there are people who have waterfront property, but yeah, we do see it. We do see king tides here, which means that the water comes up over the road and things like that. So it definitely kind of is more obvious to us being so close to the water. But yeah, it's other issues too, just people just feeling oppressed by all the stuff that's coming down. And I think, you know, environmental catastrophe is one of those things. So yeah. So thank you for the presentation. I just wanted I had that thought in the middle of the roundabout. So I thought I better wait till I got home to comment.
I think sometimes when we're talking to people about lifestyle changes they want to make, it can be powerful to pull in kind of the value added aspect of the change they would like to make also is a positive influence on the current environmental situation. So whether it's nutritional changes or activity, walking instead of driving, you know, those kinds of things, there's a way to pull that into other strategies that would add, I think, a little more motivation for people to try and incorporate some changes. I'm in South Florida and I am currently doing research with the Florida Department of Health and the Centers for Disease Control on the impact of harmful algal blooms on human health. And we're doing the initial work on how do the toxins that accompany the blooms impact human health. And that is definitely driven by warm water and nutrients in the water. And we get nutrients when we get runoff. So when we see increased storms, thunderstorms, hurricanes, that are usually surrounding warm air and warm water. So there's a lot of concern in my area about the environment. And we get the king tides, and we actually have fish on our roads when the tides go back down. So, and collapses, and I'm sure everyone saw the Surfside condominium that collapsed from saltwater intrusion, which they believe was caused by rising tides. So a lot of concern in this area. And that's I think one of the beauties of that form, the health assessment form.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds us to ask about environment.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And tagging on to what Shirley just said, I really like the idea of, when working with clients, bringing in how, their goals also link with positive goals of making changes in their life to also improve the environment. It's interesting relating to location. I'm in coastal North Carolina, and you can really see the difference from where I live, where people are very aware of it, and we have a lot of programs that really influence both the people who live here and also the local businesses on making changes, not using plastic straws, making sure that their takeout, the restaurant's takeout containers are environmentally friendly and so on. But if you travel outside of our county, it's a completely different world where people are not only not concerned, but almost resistant to it. So it's interesting to see that dichotomy where I live.
And do you think because you're coastal and so you guys know that like you've had to move the lighthouse 3 times in the last 20 years and you're seeing the barrier islands disappear before your eyes, that is making, so it's like, without seeing it, it just doesn't resonate as well.
Absolutely, without a doubt. I mean, I think if it becomes a reality for you, then it's in your frame of reference. But for people who don't have that experience and are not interested, then not so much. We have so many, including myself, so many ocean lovers here as well, that you really feel motivated to make those changes. And we have turtle hospitals, and we really see how it affects every aspect of the environment. And I think that's something that truly can be carried to folks and communities who don't always see that, and will, not for everybody, but will make a difference for some people to make those changes as well.
I'd love to hear about what's happening with you guys and where you are in the different regions of the country and how that really impacts a perspective. It's really great to connect with you guys today. Thank you for sharing that.
I know another aspect too, in terms of the connection between lifestyle, environment, and coaching is as for many areas of the country, it's been very warm. And I live in South Florida, so we understand it being hot. But the newest phenomenon here is that it's not cooling in the evening. Our low is 80 degrees. So that's the coolest it ever gets. So the earth isn't cooling at night the way it used to. And we feel that. And so the need for hydration, for example, is greater than it used to be for everyday activities. We understand it for sports and golf and those kinds of things, but for everyday activities, just being outside, going about your daily life, hydration is a much bigger concern. We're seeing more people in the emergency rooms for dehydration of all ages. So that's another aspect that we're tying into our coaching, is how are you addressing hydration? And there are healthy ways to address it and not so healthy ways to address it. So
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because, you know, in Florida, obviously in the summer it's hot and probably hydration is always an issue and in the summer in Florida. But in Washington State, we had 4 days over 115 degrees last summer. And that's just unheard of. So generally hydration is not an issue for us, but it's going to have to become an issue because even next week it's going to be 95 for 3 days in a row. And it's just, I grew up here and I just never experienced temperatures like that. So it's a whole, yeah, it's a whole shift in how physiologically we're going to adapt to such extremes, because you know, probably only, I would say 10% of the people have air conditioning here in Washington, because up until fairly recently, you didn't need it.
Yeah.
And now we have elderly folks who are, you know, sweltering in their homes when they never anticipated that. So, yeah, so it's multifaceted. Yeah, for sure.
It is. It's definitely, you know, changing our environment, and just like the algae blooms and the heat domes. Also, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't, when I was growing up, I never had seasonal allergies. And because the planet is warming, the trees are pollinating so much more, and allergies are a lot worse than they ever were and impact a lot more people. So there are all these little things that kind of add up, that show us that, you know, we have to adapt, I guess, to what's happening now. And we know that you can't just turn the ship around, but you know, if we can slow things down and mitigate the impact, then you know, that's something we can do. And we just try to do the little things and make a ripple in the pond. I think I'm going to go back to our ripple in the pond. I love that that metaphor so much from INCA.
I personally struggle because environmentalism has been an issue for me for many years, and then I do everything I can, composting and recycling and all that. And I try not to read too much about it because the most dire warnings are heartbreaking. And you know, I still continue to do the things that I do, and I try to be supportive of clients if they need support in that area. But in my heart of hearts, it's very difficult because I know that it's going to be really hard to right this ship, you know. So I do struggle. I do struggle with that worst case scenario mentality.
And I just saw this week that Time magazine, I believe, is out, and their cover story is about the glacier disappearance and what that means. Not only for rising tides, but for you know, viruses that have been frozen for hundreds, thousands of years, and all that kind of really sci-fi scary stuff out there that could become a reality for us.
It sounds like an episode of X-Files.
It does, doesn't it? And we have friends that live in Alaska, and the pictures that they send are just shocking, just shocking.
Yeah. So it's, yeah, I struggle, but I try to, you know, it's something that I deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah, the struggle's real, no doubt. You know, for those of us who really care, it can be really hard to think about.
And I think you mentioned mindfulness before. I think that is probably the best salve for this wound right now, because you know, what's done is done. We can't change it. In the future, we don't know. All we really have is a present moment, you know, and living in that moment. And I think mindfulness really keeps us there. And so I appreciate the effect it has on myself and on my clients for a variety of reasons. But, you know, climate catastrophe is one of those huge ones for me. It's what I fear more than really anything else. So it's tough. Yeah.
Hmm.
That's a scary note to end this session on, isn't it?
I know, right? We need to find a way to end the session with hope and just knowing that that we can make a difference and that we have the capacity for that. And that as nurses and as nurse coaches, that we have so much ability to impact change. And that if we plant those little seeds with our clients or with our local nurses association, or get involved with Practice Green Health, or get involved with the Alliance of the Nurse Alliance for Healthcare for Environmental oh my gosh, I can't think of it right now, but it's on the resources. You know, we get involved with groups that are like-minded, and then we can lobby and we can advocate for making a change. And there's still a chance, and there's still a lot that we can do. There's still hope. And I just appreciate you guys coming together, and I just loved hearing from you all from all different corners of the country. I think we've got representation from the Southwest, the Southeast, the South, and the Northwest today. So it's just wonderful to hear from you guys, and I love to connect with people who feel passionate about the environment and about climate change and about living a healthier life. And so it's been a great almost hour to spend with you guys. Thank you so much.